cheap shot that was.
Hello and welcome to Cheap Shot Entertainment and Talk is Cheap, the podcast for Cheap Shot Entertainment. Today, I've got one of the biggest stars of the Aspire Wrestling Alliance on the podcast. It is the Militia's Paul Malen. How are we doing, Paul?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm really good, mate. I'm really good. Really, I'm hurting from all those workouts you're doing over Zoom, to be honest.
That's good. As they say, no pain, no gain.
And what better way than to be trained by the champ at Aspire Wrestling Alliance, eh?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure there's better.
Not much that I've felt, mate, to be honest. I've paid for classes before that have been more expensive. And
that's good.
Not got as big a buzz out of it than when we do the classes with you over Zoom. But
nice one.
We'll get to that in a little while because obviously we're going to talk about Aspire and what they're doing now. But you're my guest, so let's talk about how you got started and all that kind of stuff. So, how did you get started in professional wrestling?
So I'm sure pretty much everybody's story is always going to be the same, apart from a select few that kind of just jump into wrestling, not really knowing anything about it. But I remember the first time I ever saw wrestling on TV, and must have been 6 or 7, and it was on Sky One, and it was basically a promo to advertise an upcoming match, and the match was at SummerSlam 91, and it was Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior talking about what they were going to do to Sergeant Slaughter and his crew of villains. And when I saw those guys, I was just hooked, addicted to it, because it was like watching cartoon characters come to life.
Yeah.
So I became a fan watching it, and fast forward a good 9 years, and I was walking through Ilkeston Town Centre, and there was a poster in a shop window, and it was a black and white poster, and it was advertising a tribute wrestling show, and it was at the Albion Leisure Centre.
Yeah.
And there was a steel cage match advertised.
Ooh.
And I wondered what it was, and I just remember saying, "What's this?" And my brother was like, "Okay, we'll go to watch it." So my brother took me to this wrestling show, and there was a queue. There must have been 300 people in this queue. Queued up for so long, got to the door, and there was a sign on the door that said steel cage match is cancelled due to health and safety regulations. But that was fine because they had on the show a tribute Undertaker, and I legit thought this Undertaker was the real life character, because move for move, and just the look, he just looked exactly like him. And that is when I really decided that I wanted to do something like that. And it didn't matter how I was going to get there. I wanted to be performing in front of crowds like that. And I moved on to watching shows in theatres, and my love for theatre came from there. Just I still get it to this day, like the buzz of going to a wrestling show that's in a theatre, just on a stage. Yeah. Performing in front of a big crowd in a theatre, it always gets me. My goal was never to, like, it was always in my head that I wanted to be a WWE wrestler or something like that. But it was truly going to watch the UK Indies that I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do.
Mm.
So that's what got me into it.
Brilliant. And how did you start training and things? Was that local or?
So my story with training is a bit strange, because nowadays people can walk to a training school or go on a short bus ride. Whereas me, I was watching the Wrestling Channel. I don't know if you guys remember the Wrestling Channel when that was on.
I do, yeah.
But there was that, and there was schools advertised on there. But I remember it was my last day of senior school, and one of my friends came running up to me with a Power Slam magazine. And I've got this ad, and I'll send you a picture of the ad. The ad was it was a photograph of Raven, covered in blood, And the ad was, "Do you want to be a wrestler?" And it was for a school in Kent called NWA UK Hammerlock. And so I saved my money for a 1-day basic introductory course, which was 65 quid. And I'd never traveled anywhere on my own. And yet here I am, I'm going on a train to London, getting free tubes, going from a train from London to Kent to do a course for 5 hours, to then miss my last train home. So I had to sit on a park bench until 9 o'clock the next morning and pay out for another train. So yeah, that was my first day of wrestling. And from there on, I got a job, and I'd saved money for the next course, which would be a week in the summer and a week in the winter. That was the only school that was advertised then. And so I did that for about a year. And then on the wrestling channel, there was advertisements for a school in Portsmouth and a school in Manchester. So I basically travelled and toured schools, going back and forth from Portsmouth to Manchester. And then at Manchester, I actually met a guy that said, "Why are you coming here? There's a school in Nottingham." And I was like, "What?" Yeah. And there was so all the time I've been travelling to Portsmouth and to Manchester, there was already a school in Nottingham at the Notts County ground. So that's where I started there, and that's where I met Styx, and that's where I, after about, I think I got a bit of heat training there, because I think I was only training for about 2 months before I started getting put on shows. But I don't think that they realised that I'd actually done a lot of training previously, actually travelling around and doing it. So yeah, that's where it ended for me in Nottingham, after I spent so much money travelling the UK when I didn't really need to.
Wow. So, I mean, you've travelled far and wide then to get your training and things, which is a good thing, because obviously you're now doing the training as head trainer for Aspire. So obviously something clicked during those training sessions.
It introduces to you the importance of knowing that you're going to have to travel, especially if you want to be taken seriously. Like a lot of people I used to travel with, the journey would be like an hour or an hour and a half. And some of the newbies that I travel with are like, "Oh God, it's such a long journey." I'm like, "It's a long journey. Wait until you're traveling for like 5 hours one way. That's a long journey."
Yeah.
But then in the States, they travel for up to a day to go to a show, just one show, and then they come back. So yeah, it really introduced me to the importance of knowing that to be taken seriously and to actually do this, you've got to know that you travel is very, very important.
Yeah, and it does bring me on to another question, actually. So I'm going to mix the questions up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the next question is, what is the furthest you've ever travelled for a wrestling match?
So in the UK, it would because obviously I'm from the Midlands, so I've travelled to Scotland, and then down the other way, it's the Isle of Wight. But then I've also wrestled in Germany, so they're the kind of the biggest distances for me to have travelled to wrestling anyway.
So is the wrestling shows in Germany, is that any different to what we see in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, I've wrestled in Germany 3 times, and each time was a different experience. Funnily enough, there was this story now. This is one of my favourite matches, just because it really introduced me to learning how to do it on the fly and not having every kind of spot planned out and having A to Z mapped out. So I was wrestling. I don't know if you guys can remember Alex Wright.
Yeah.
Das Wunderkid, the dude that does the techno dance.
Yeah, I remember Alex.
Yeah, traveling to I can't remember the name of the place, but it is the town is where Hitler was buried. And that's pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, so traveling to this place, there was me and one other Brit, and I didn't know this British guy. We met at the airport, and I'd never really met him before. He seemed to remember me, but I didn't remember him. So it was kind of like, okay, a bit strange. And we got to Germany, and straight away he kind of annoyed the promoter and annoyed the rest of the German crew. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm being painted under the same tar here. So I'm booked in to wrestle. Alex Dieter Jr., who I believe has actually had a few tryouts with the WWE, and he's pretty big in Germany now. But it was a really massive crowd, really great crowd. The ring turned out to be a backyard wrestling ring, so the ropes were made of hose pipe, and the ring was rock solid. Ring was so hard. And I'm supposed to be the big bad guy, and he's the good guy. And so we had the structure to the match, and everything was mapped out. And getting ready behind the curtain to go out, and literally 2 minutes before the match, the promoter is flapping around, and he comes running up to me, and in his broken English, he says, "We change everything. We must change everything." And I was, gobsmacked, like, what? And my opponent is speaking German to the promoter and shouting at him, and I don't understand what's going on. I just said, "Listen, what's happening?" And he says, "We must change everything." And apparently, so Alex Wright is the teacher to the guy that I was wrestling, and Alex Wright had a regular TV show in Germany, and he didn't like that his man was wrestling me as a good guy, because on his TV show he is a bad guy. So he says, "Alex Wright has told us we must change everything." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, well, Axel is a villain on the TV show, so now we must switch it. Now Axel is the villain, and you are the good guy," which I thought was quite weird, because I was, a foreigner. Yeah. So I thought, well, they're not going to cheer for me. They're not going to get behind me or anything. And we basically went out there with a blank canvas. We'd never wrestled each other before, and we went out and we wrestled for 45 minutes, hold for hold, and the crowd absolutely were enthralled and loved it. And I remember, like, the first thing I ever did, and I do this all the time, people say, wrestling crowds don't like clapping, it's cheesy. And I remember just going straight back to what I used to do, stepped in the ring, and I just clapped my hands, and all these Germans are looking at me like, what the hell is this guy doing? And I just looked at the crowd and I went, well, go on, clap then. And then just slowly all of these Germans just started clapping and kind of looking at their hands like, what are we doing? And throughout the whole match, I couldn't get them to stop clapping. Yeah, it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, that was so strange at first, but then they absolutely loved it. And yeah, one of my favorite matches. And I remember, like I just said to you now, the ring was so hard, I actually did a drop kick and landed on the top of my shoulder. Ooh. And dislocated my shoulder. Oh. So, yeah, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to a hospital here. I remember we drank a lot, and I got quite drunk, and I fell asleep on the promoter's mother's armchair. And he woke me up at 5 a.m, gave me a bottle of water, took me to the airport. And I remember getting on the flight, and I couldn't raise my arms to get my bag in the overhead luggage compartment. And a little old lady actually got out of her seat and helped me put my bag in the overhead compartment. Yeah. So yeah, that was that journey. And that was, one of my favorite matches. And it just goes to show that you don't have to have everything down to have a good match. You have to rely on yourself and your knowledge. Like at the time, yeah. I've been wrestling a few years, but it's experience like that really teach you more about yourself and the wrestling business as well.
Yeah, because of course it's not all planned out. Like a few people do think it is. It is. I would liken it to pantomime. It is a little bit planned out, but a lot of it. I mean, you're an athlete. You train hard. You train us hard when we come to training with you and everything. And just got to appreciate the athleticism that you put into it and the effort you put into it. So
definitely,
I've never failed to be entertained by one of your matches. And
thank
you. Going back to the cage match thing, I think one of my favorite matches that I've ever seen you in was for another promotion, House of Pain, local, and it was at Hena Leisure Centre, the very same place that I saw Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks wrestle in their heyday, if they ever had. Wow. And that was a cage match. That was the Malen Militia, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were against, I'm trying to remember, G-Wiz, Ritmo, and who was the other? I'm trying to remember.
It was... Was it DDA? I can't remember the third person.
I can't remember now. But yeah, I remember that cage. Though I've worked in that cage a few times, and that cage has no give to it at all. You may as well just be throwing yourself against an electric fence. Absolutely, yeah. I remember my elbows have hit those cages before, and that cage is one of the reasons why I've got chips in my elbows, bone chips. Yeah, it's not very nice.
Yeah, well, we'll skip over that then, because that was one of my favourite matches until you gave me the detail. But no, obviously that's one of the first times I've ever seen a cage match up close and personal, and it's always one of those things that it is still, they still treat it quite special, isn't it? When you have a speciality match.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you've answered the question about your favourite match, and it was, the Germany one, and brilliant. I mean, that must have been such a buzz, just being able to do things on the fly. It's always a buzz to me when you've got that conundrum.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of other people, like I could imagine a lot of the way they think about their favourite matches kind of differ, because with me, my favourite matches are the matches that you can tell you get that reaction from the audience that you play the whole match for, and B, the matches in which I learn the most. So like I said, the match in Germany, I learned such valuable information from that, which you can't learn in a training school. You have to learn when you're actually in the ring.
I thought it was.
And also like working with Matt Stryker, who was a wrestler, but he's more known for being a commentator in the WWE. I wrestled him on a week tour. I wrestled him 3 times, and the matches we had were just like, there was so much that I learned from those. And again, we didn't really plan too much. It was a case of the first night, him not trusting me. But after that first match, he was like, I want to wrestle this guy every night because it was so easy and he looked after me. And it's just matches like that. And in terms of saying, getting the reaction from the audience that you want, for me, the match over recent years is the Extreme Rules match with Ronan for the Aspire Wrestling Championship. That goes down as one of my favorite matches of all time.
Yeah, I did recently watch that, actually, because obviously I couldn't be there for the live match, but I know the whole match is on the Aspire Wrestling Alliance YouTube channel. So if people are listening and want to look at that match, go over to Aspire Wrestling on YouTube and have a watch of it, because it is a phenomenal match. I mean, I think at one point you pulled the ring apart pretty much just to finish, didn't you? And it was awesome. Such an awesome match. Really good.
Oh, thank you.
You and Ronan, better opponents and bitter enemies, but more recently you've tagged with Ronan, haven't you?
Obviously before these times with COVID and stuff, we were actually thinking of forming a tag team, but that's kind of been put on hold at the moment.
And of course, Ronan is one of the other trainers at Aspire Wrestling Alliance as well, so you work quite closely with him anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, we went from warring over the Aspire Wrestling title for just over a year to working together now and hopefully forming a tag team one day.
Yeah, I'd look forward to that. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So you're known as the malicious Paul Malen. Have you had any different ring names in the past? Have you? Has it changed any?
Yeah, there's been a few. So I started. So I was training from 2003 to 2005. So touring and basically traveling schools. And then 2005 is when I started at. So the promotion back then wasn't called House of Pain. It was called Norton British Wrestling.
Okay.
And it was the promoter / con man from Lincolnshire that basically would come down to Nottingham and bring his ring once a month for you to perform in, and then you basically learn to wrestle on the judo mats and stuff. So like I said, I trained there for 2 months before I got put on a show, and I didn't have a name. I was called, so I didn't really have a clue. And so my original wrestling name was Malen Kane, and if anybody's ever seen the movie Constantine, Malen is the name of the devil in his human form. So that's a bit, so that's a bit of trivia there. Oh. So yeah, so that was my original name, and so after that, it kind of got changed a little bit. So it's we don't really like Malen Kane, so it's like, well, how about Paul Malen? I was like, okay, and then I got given the name the Prodigy, which that kind of stuck with me for a while. And then after that, just one of the ring announcers just said, okay, he's malicious. And I was like, I actually like that. Mm. So I used that for a little while, and that kind of got pushed out a little bit because I went under the name The Warrior for a while. And then I went under the name The Brain of Pain, Paul Malen, for a while. And then over recent years, I bought Malicious back and tried to use it as a brand more than anything.
Yeah,
that's the one that
totally.
That's works. That's the one I prefer anyway. Malicious.
Yeah, it definitely works, mate. Definitely.
And I mean, there's been some promoters. There's been some promoters that haven't liked any of my names. Like everybody's heard of Brian Dixon and All Star Wrestling.
Yeah.
And so turn up and I tell Brian my name. What's your name? What's your name? And I was like, oh, my name's, Paul Malen. It's Paul Malen. It doesn't sound very showbiz at all. So get in the ring, and the introductions are done in the ring. And this is my first night for All Star Wrestling. Like I said, in a theater, packed out, probably 500 people in the crowd. I'm in the middle of the ring, and the announcer. And here he is, all the way from Stapleford, Nottingham. And I'm like, here it comes. And it was, he is the high-flying sensation. And I was like, what? And then here she says, Steve Melvin. And I would just remember gritting my teeth and thinking, what the bloody hell is this? Yeah, but then he always gives me funny names. It became a joke in the end because I'd stand in the middle of the ring. And every night it'd be something different. Like I think one night I was called Power Pack Paul. Yeah, and it just got worse and worse.
Oh wow, that's hilarious. All I could think of though when you was telling that story, Paul, is the Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's great.
Where it's like, I'm Spider-Man. No, kid, you're the human spider.
Yeah, that was great.
That's all I can think of.
It is. It pretty much is like that.
Oh, brilliant! So, best opponent or tag partner? You've been in a couple of tag teams, haven't you?
Yeah. So, in terms of tag teams, it's everybody will always remember the Predators, which was me and Joseph Connors. So that tag team is definitely there for me. The most success I had as a tag team as well. I was a tag team with Styx for a little while as well. We were called Styx and S&M, which is a bit dodgy, but yeah, Styx and Malen coming to the ring with chains. So yeah, that was a bit bit risque.
It worked for Demolition.
It worked for Demolition. Yeah. We used to come to the ring in chains and balaclavas. So yeah, that would be that's definitely can't be done now. Yeah. I'm trying to think. There aren't really any other tag. I mean, I've been a tag team with LJ Heron, and we've held a tag team title in EBW, and we tagged a little bit in Hope. Other than that, it's the tag team with Joe that stands out the most to me. But like I said, it was before COVID. Me and Ronan were thinking of starting a team, and never say never. We might get to do it one day. That'd be quite cool.
Yeah, definitely look forward to
that. Opponents wise, favorite opponent over previous years. Anyway, I've had some great matches with DDA. I believe one of my favorite matches of recent years, as well as the match for the House of Pain title in Hina, where it was doing DDA for that title. That's up there as well.
Yeah.
Me and Styx have always had good matches. Like we've toured the country, basically beating the hell out of each other.
Yeah.
The First Blood match against Joseph Connors for Southside Wrestling, that's definitely the one where I throw him off of the balcony. That's what everybody says. Is that the one where you threw a guy off a balcony? Like, yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the matches with Ronan, the matches that I had with Ronan, they always they stick up there for me as well in terms of favorite matches and opponents.
Perfect. So, I mean, I've got male and female here. Have you ever had like a valet, or you ever worked with any female wrestlers?
Oh, I've had tons of intergender matches, which a lot of people are quite surprised that I've had intergender matches.
Mm.
But it came to a point that I was working with a touring promotion where they'd want a women's match, but they could only find one woman.
Mm.
So like, okay, we'll have to put them in an intergender match. And I think they kind of realized that I wasn't too worried about looking silly.
Mm.
So, because as a heel, I like to be quite comedic as a heel anyway. So I've wrestled the likes of Lana Austin, Tony Storm, Nixon Newell, who is Tegan Knox in WWE now. So I've wrestled quite a few intergender matches, and one of my favorite intergender matches was Lana Austin, just because it was her hometown.
Mm.
And basically I came to the ring and talked to the audience, slating them all, saying that, Manchester is where you would put an enema in the world. Lana Austin's music hits. She accepts the challenge. We have a really cool match. And I believe I walked out of the match. So here's the story. I walk out of the match and just leave, and I get counted out and I lose.
Mm.
And afterwards, we were doing backstage signings. And so I was down on one knee signing autographs for kids, which as a villain, I probably shouldn't have been doing anyway.
Yeah.
And then this kid comes up to me and he says, you beat up my mom. And he hits me like with 3 jabs to the face. Literally jabs me in the face 3 times. Like it was a perfect like jab, cross. And I literally was like, hang on a minute. And I stood up, and it turned out to be Lana Austin's son.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I was just literally like, wow, like I've never been hit by a child 3 times. But yeah. But in terms of working with, I've never really had valets. I had a valet when I first started, which was Stephanie Scope. But other than that, I never really got to work with managers and valets that often.
Okay. No, I mean, I completely agree with you. Lana Austin is absolutely awesome. I think one of my favorite intergender matches was at Hope with Lana Austin in it. And
that was T-Bone, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal match. And it's the one that got me hooked on Hope Wrestling. Really.
Was it? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
By the following year, I had a season ticket for them, and I was going every month.
Wow, nice.
And it was great, absolutely brilliant. Loved it. So, have you got any funny road stories?
Yeah, there's a few, but I can't really tell some of them. I'm trying to think of. Let's have a think. I'm trying to think now. Okay, so here's one.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a company which is based in London, but they decided that they wanted to do a week-long tour of the North.
Mm.
So the tour would start in Newcastle, and it would basically go around like Whitley Bay and all these surrounding areas, and it would end in Middlesbrough, which is, I don't know if you've ever been up north that far.
No,
but
I haven't quite made it to Middlesbrough and Newcastle.
Yeah, you probably don't want to. But yeah, so the tour started, and it's a 5-night tour. And I believe over the 5 nights, the crowds were that bad that during the whole tour, they probably only had 200 people combined in the audiences over the whole tour. So the tour was a bomb, really.
Mm.
So the first night we had a decent like kind of travel lodge room, and it was like there was 10 wrestlers. So we had a room which was like 3 wrestlers in each room pretty much.
Yeah.
And then as the tour goes on, he's cancelling one of the rooms. So we would have to kind of book 3 wrestlers in, but then the rest of the crew has to sneak into the rooms. Yeah, to sleep on the floor under a coat and stuff. And then by the time the very final night comes along, he cancelled all of the hotel rooms. So his idea was for us to drive to a service station and sleep on the benches at the Little Chef, or just sit up all night. And we weren't having any of that. So it was like, literally, you have to find us somewhere to stay, or we're just going home now.
Yeah.
So he said he'd found us somewhere to stay. And it was like a convoy. He was in the ring van, promoter was in the ring van, and then there's cars following this van. And we just pull up onto this cul-de-sac. And we was like, where are we? Like, we're in a cul-de-sac in Middlesbrough. And it's like, I think it was October as well. So it's at the end of October. So it's starting to get really cold.
Yeah.
And so the promoter goes out and knocks on this door. And basically, we all get snuck into a wrestler's house to sleep in his living room. So there's 10 wrestlers. This guy that we've knocked on the house, he's not even performing on the tour. He's just a friend. And literally, he's like 17. So his parents and his family are asleep upstairs while there's 10 wrestlers sneaking into this chap's living room, and we're all going to sleep on the floor. And it's the most... It was a scary time, because I was thinking, well, can you imagine if this is your house? You come down to get a drink in the night, and there's 10 men all like in boxers asleep in sleeping blankets and stuff in your living room. How would you react? But yeah, the funny thing is that the guy had a hamster. So we're all getting ready to go to sleep, and the promoter was like, oh, I'm having the sofa because I've driven. And I'm thinking, we've all driven, you cheapskate. And so the promoter lays down. Just as we're all going to sleep, this hamster starts running around in this wheel. It scares the living hell out of the promoter, and he jumps up and lets out the loudest squeal I've ever heard in my life. And he's like, oh my God, what's that? And I just say, it's a hamster, you idiot. But yeah, and we all had to sneak out at 5 o'clock in the morning, so the parents wouldn't find out we were there. It was just so outrageous.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't miss times like that. There's plenty of more stories, but that's the one that comes to mind for me anyway.
Maybe we'll do an 18+ version.
Yes, definitely need that. Yeah.
Oh dear. So we've heard about Paul Malen as a wrestler, but what do you do in your spare time? What do you do to fill that spare time in between shows?
So in the spare time before, for me, would basically just be like, I'm a big gamer and I love movies and stuff, and I used to love going to the cinema. So obviously we can't go to the cinema at the minute. So that's one of my big hobbies. But recently, this past year, working on my own physical and mental fitness has really been my mission. So, and also actually doing a college course in learning how to be a PT and a trainer in a gym, and actually going through a yoga course soon as well. That's something that it's really opened my eyes, actually learning how to train my body to prolong my health and prolong my life as well. Especially in these times where building up your immune system to fight COVID and fight other viruses is really important as well. So at the minute, just trying to find my way back to watching wrestling and actually enjoying wrestling again. And watching movies when I can, reading, spending time with my kids and stuff, and training again, stuff like that. That's kind of what I do in my spare time anyway.
Excellent. I look forward to doing some yoga sessions with you, because I'm missing my yoga sessions at the moment.
Oh, it's great. It's really like it's changed my life this year. It really has opened my eyes to, why wasn't I doing this before?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty much the same. I was struggling with my back, and I went and did some yoga sessions, and I've never looked back, to be honest.
Yeah,
it was phenomenal for me.
That's good.
Just stretching out and doing everything slower and meticulous.
Oh yeah, it really does help. Especially people involved in wrestling. If people are sat here listening to this now thinking yoga, you'll never catch me doing yoga.
Yeah,
give it a try, because it'll really it'll open your eyes.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So you say you're a gamer.
Hmm.
Favorite games? Favorite
I'm a
consoles?
big fan of the survival horror genre. So
Oh
I
yeah.
love my Resident Evil games. Uh, Favorite Resident Evil game would probably be the original Resident Evil 2, which I did
Yeah.
enjoy the remake, but Resident Evil 2 was the first ever PlayStation game I had. I had that, Alien Trilogy, and Crash Bandicoot, and Resident Evil 2 opened my eyes to that genre anyway.
Yeah.
The Last of Us, absolutely love the Last of Us games. They're amazing. I've always been a fan of Theme Hospital as well, which I've never played Two Point Hospital, but I've got to get that. But yeah, Theme
I'm
Hospital, that
playing
was,
2 points at the moment.
yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. Used to love wrestling games, not so much now. Wrestling games seem to be more difficult to play now.
Yeah, when you could just get on a console like PlayStation area, get your
Yeah,
4 bar out,
yeah,
and have 3 mates round, and you could play like in the same room as each other. Obviously,
definitely.
again, not so much anymore. So the internet's become a great thing, hasn't it?
Oh
But
yeah, definitely. I think one of my other
we
favorite games as well is the if anybody's ever played this, the Telltale series of The Walking Dead.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I've
love
played
that.
them.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, really good game that. So done games, movies, favorite movies, genres, anything.
Movies, I'm a big horror. I don't get to watch horror too often, but
Yeah,
yeah, horror movies. Always been a big fan. One of my favorite horror movies is the original Dawn of the Dead movie.
yeah, fantastic.
Uh, Love the Friday the 13th and the Halloween movies. My
Yeah.
favorite Friday the 13th is Jason Takes Manhattan. And my favorite Halloween movie is the original Halloween.
Oh yeah, can't get better than the original Halloween.
But then, I'm a fan of everything really, action, comedy, yeah, everything. It's even musicals now. I'm into everything. I'm a man of different tastes.
Excellent, excellent. So, has anything like had a question come through on social media?
Yeah.
What makes you choose your entrance themes? What's the thinking behind your entrance themes?
So I used to put a lot of thought, probably too much thought behind the music and originally. Like I think people tend to put more thought behind their character when they first start out because when you've been doing it for a fair few years, it's kind of like, okay, let's just try and keep it flowing. So I know everybody always loved it when I used to come out to Loner by Black Sabbath, which was
Mm.
funny because I was the leader of a faction, so I was never on my own really. But yeah, that one there, and actually the song that I come out to now, which is "Welcome to the Jungle,"
Mm.
I was supposed to have something else, but then the guy doing the music was like, "No, you're coming out to this because it's cool as hell," and I was like, "But I don't want that as my music." It was like, "No, you're coming out to this," and it just played, and I thought, "Yeah, this works." So that's the reason why I come out to that now. But it's always good to have a track where the second the music starts playing, your heart starts pumping and your head starts bobbing, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm into this. This is me." Always good.
Yeah,
It's part of the character. The entrance is more important than anything sometimes. Because you think about it, it's the first time you step out of the curtain. If they don't believe you when you come out, how are they going to believe you when you get into the ring?
exactly. And if you've got music to go along with that character, then absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Couldn't agree more. Plus, as long if you're a face, you can clap along to it and
Yeah,
stuff like that,
yeah,
and it gets the crowd involved. And I'm
definitely.
guessing that's a big part of you want that crowd reaction, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
So been doing obviously been chatting quite a lot recently. We've been still working for Aspire, but through the pandemic, Aspire has turned into something different. It's become a full-on food bank.
Yeah.
And through that, obviously, we can't do training sessions and stuff. So you've been doing Zoom classes.
Mm-hmm.
And are you still enjoying doing those Zoom classes? Are they something that's going to continue into the new year and things?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's nothing better than the people that are doing the Zoom classes seeing them improve so much, which is a regular occurrence at the minute. It's getting a lot harder to actually put people through their paces because their level of fitness has improved so much. So I'm really struggling to get you guys and girls to struggle. There's no better feeling than actually helping somebody in that term and actually making them realize that, you know, your health is really important. And the only reason I say that is because I was exactly the same way. At the start of the year, my health was so poor. Like, I was really struggling with asthma, and I didn't realize it, but it's like my body was kind of failing on me. And it's strange because the second we had to stop wrestling, it's like my body went into remission. And all of the years of bumping and taking the silly things that I did was affecting me because my body was starting to hurt more and more each day. And that's the reason why I started yoga, because I was like, I've got to do something. Can't go to a hospital or a doctor's with this because they'll just turn you away because it's not, you know, it's not COVID related. So it's just really trying to push physical health and mental health to help people by just doing a 20-minute workout over Zoom. You don't have to have your microphone turned on. You don't have to have your camera turned on. All you need to be able to do is see me and just join in with what the rest of the class are doing. And if there's something that you're struggling with, you make up your own alternatives to it, just as long as you join in and participate. And that's the whole thing, doing everything, doing all of this as a team and working together to get the results that you really want.
Absolutely. And obviously a lot of the things that motivate people in terms of that, I know because I work in a leisure centre as well, is coming in and doing that physical activity with others.
Yeah.
And even if that's only on camera, it does help.
Definitely. I mean, I know a lot of people struggle when the gyms close because that's their motivation, being at a gym. Whereas I stopped being motivated into going to a gym a long time ago because I didn't realize how much I struggled with social anxiety, because it really stopped me from going, and it really stopped me from being fit and healthy because I wasn't going there and I had no motivation. And then I just started working out at the training center on my own. And then obviously when we had to close the training center down, moved to working out at home. And I know a lot of people have struggled with working out at home, but it's actually been a lot better for me. So even though the gyms are open again now, I'll still continue to work out at home, and I'll probably never, ever go back to a gym. It's the way I'm motivated to work in now. It really does help me. And, you know, things are different. People are different. You know, what works for one person might not work for another person, and that's fine. But it's just finding out what works for you and sticking to that, because that's all that matters at the end of the day.
And I think, like for me personally, getting up and physically going to a gym makes me want to do it a bit more.
Yeah.
Much like the Zoom classes, you know, we're doing it at this time on this day. It gets me ready because I know I'm going to be doing.
That's good.
That thing. So for me, it's definitely a case of having a schedule to work.
Awesome. That's really good.
And it works for me, and that's why I love doing the Zoom classes with you.
Nice one, thank you.
And seeing people from Aspire as well, which is always a good thing, and having that bit of a chat.
That's great.
So, final question: what is the future for Paul Malen and Aspire?
I mean, I feel that when COVID came along, Aspire had reached a new level, and it's really difficult because, excuse me. So the way everybody was training, and just Aspire was gaining so much momentum, and then this happened. So it's kind of taken 3 steps back, but at some point we're going to have to take more than 3 steps forward. And the only way we do that is by everybody being prepared and ready. And this is why, again, physical and mental fitness is really important. Aspire has never been just a wrestling promotion. I think sometimes even the wrestlers forgot that themselves. It's always been, you know, a community project. The wrestling is there to help people. And I can list countless people that wrestling has helped, and especially Aspire Wrestling. And it's a great feeling to know that. Obviously
Well, you know
now
what,
things have
darling?
changed.
Hello, Malen, darling. How are you?
It's Christy.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, that's
Well-
one person that's helped.
Well, you know, I've just been listening to this droning going on, and I thought I'm going to have to find out what it is. I come in here to find out that you're conducting an interview with Malen without me, darling. Seriously.
The interviews with Paul Malen, the Aspire Wrestling champion.
Hey, I need a valet. There we go. We were talking about valets earlier. What's going on?
Oh, you need a valet, darling.
There we go. Sorted.
Next time we can talk face to face, so you'll have to put some figures my way.
There we go. Have your people call my people.
Oh, my people might be far too busy and important to call yours. You've got to do the chasing, darling.
That's all right. I've got no people anyway.
And talking of people, isn't it about time that Johnny Bedford showed his face to the world?
This is true. This is true.
You're just keeping that face away from all those people. I do think that's very selfish.
I don't know. I don't think he has a mirror big enough for that big head of his.
Honestly, that's a perfect head. Any mirror it would be a pleasure for any mirror to see that head.
Okay.
Anyway, darling, you're boring me. I'm going to go now.
Thank you. Ciao.
Laters.
Ciao. Laters.
Sorry about that, Paul. I wasn't expecting a run-in on this podcast.
That's okay. I'm used to it. There was no music though. It's weird without an audience.
Yeah. So yeah, the future for Paul Malen, future opponents.
Yeah. So with Aspire, business has changed, but that doesn't mean that the plan hasn't. So Aspire's still there to help people in a very different way now. Like it's again saving thousands and thousands of lives, doing food bank stuff, and not only that, but it's just helping the community. So anybody, if you don't know of Aspire, find Aspire on Facebook, anything like that, and you'll see what the guys and girls there are doing and how much it really is making an impact on people without wrestling.
Yeah.
So when wrestling does come back, you know, we'll be in a completely different place there, and the only way is up with that. So it's just making sure everybody's ready. Obviously, right now I'm the Aspire Wrestling champion, and there's the match looming over my head, which is myself and Rourke.
Yeah,
the Monster Rourke. So that is the first bit of business for myself, and we'll see how that goes. But then there's lots of other people that I'd like to get in the ring with. Like I said to you, the tag team with Ronan maybe one day, and then stepping in the ring there with quite a few other people. But right now it's just making sure I'm fit both physically and mentally, and prepared for everybody to see a different side of me. That's what I'm looking forward to more than anything.
Yeah, I absolutely can't wait for wrestling to get back. Obviously the work that Aspire is doing now is incredibly important, and I know from a personal point of view, if I hadn't been involved with doing that, I think I would be in a different place to what I am now, mentally, physically. We've talked about the Zoom classes, but obviously going in to Aspire and
that's great.
Myself and the other volunteers that are there, it's kept me sane throughout.
That's great. That's really great.
Lockdown, pandemic, and everything, and it's an amazing thing that we're doing, and hopefully people will continue to remember Aspire Wrestling as well as Aspire as.
I'm sure they will.
Where we go out and we deliver food and we help people, and that is the main part of Aspire, is the heartbeat of the community.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely.
It certainly has been that. It's kept Derby going throughout the last 10 months, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. Definitely.
And it's been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely been out of this world to be part of it.
It's great. Absolutely great.
So we've come to the end. Is there anything you want to add, Paul, to the
no, just to thank anybody for listening, and to make sure to check in on Cheap Shot Entertainment's your reviews of wrestling, your reviews of movies, and also to log into any more of these podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully we can do something very similar with Aspire as well going forward.
That'd be great. That would be great.
So that is the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on to Talk is Cheap, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Aspire Wrestling Alliance champion and head trainer Paul Malen on the show. Hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast. These have been very much few and far between. And our special unannounced guest, Christy. Been really, really fun talking to you. I've learned a lot of things from you today, which has been absolutely fantastic. As a wrestling fan, it's always good to talk to a wrestler that's been so far and wide to do what they love doing. So thank you very much for listening to the podcast. I have been your host, Luke. You are the Cheap Shot Nation, and I will see you next time on Talk is Cheap. Goodbye. There we go.
Are you still there? Oh, you're still there.